Hi everybody, welcome to another video by the DissociaDID system. We have a guest here today with us.
Hi everyone, I'm Scarlet of the Labyrinth System.
And we're going to be doing a video today comparing the differences between mental health care in the UK and in the US.
The majority of the experiences we've had are with mental health professionals, like therapists and stuff like that. I don't even think we really tell our GP about our DID usually, because in our experience, if we tell our GP about our DID, it tends to lead to them not really believing our pain and things like that, or any mental illness, because I'm not sure really how it works with the UK, but they don't all have access to our records. So our mental health records are not accessed by our PCP, our primary care. We don't tell them or give them those records, then they're not going to have them.
That's interesting, because as far as I know in the UK, the GP, as long as the information is sent through from the therapist, then they have access to all our medical records, so they can access anything. So who we've seen, if we've got any diagnoses and stuff like that, it all has to go through the GP first. That's an interesting difference.
For us, in order for our mental health professional to send over any records or anything like that, we usually have to sign a piece of paper giving them permission to send it over. I think for a lot of people who start with their GP, probably they have it on their records, but we've been in the mental health system since age 7, about age 7. So we've always been seeing mental health professionals.
That's such a long time.
Age 7, they misdiagnosed us with ADHD because it was PTSD symptoms, but a lot of times PTSD symptoms present as ADHD in kids. So they had us on ADHD medication, and it's just been since then just seeing different doctors and stuff like that.
Did the ADHD medication make your symptoms worse, like with the dissociation and stuff?
Yeah, it definitely, it made the hypervigilance worse. Since it wasn't ADHD that was going on, it kind of just made us more hyper, and the way that ADHD medication does for people who don't have it. So it made hypervigilance worse and anxiety worse for sure.
I know that it's an average of, isn't it 6 to 8 years in the system before you get a correct diagnosis? Yeah.
Yeah, it's 7 years, which I think is wild that it's 7 years. It takes that long for anybody to figure out what's going on, which I guess is what we're here to talk about.
Exactly.
The lack of understanding.
Yeah. I really think that if there were more professionals who were trained in dealing with DID, or professionals who had not necessarily chosen to take it as a specialization, but who just were given at least some kind of background on this is what DID is, it's a real disorder, that it would be so much easier for people to get diagnoses. Yeah, exactly. I think it does come back to the education of a lot of mental health professionals. They're not really taught about DID, or they're taught things that aren't necessarily true, and then it follows over into their professional lives. Yeah, I think that's the same in both our countries. DID is an underdiagnosed disorder, and we don't have enough professionals who know how to deal with it. Because you don't have the NHS in your country, do you have to have, from the government, I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't remember what the word is.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I know that's how they do it over there. You wait a while beforehand. With us, unless you're approved for disability or Medicaid or something like that, it's very hard to get health insurance. A lot of my friends don't have health insurance at all, so they won't, even for physical things, if they're sick or something, they won't go to the doctor because they don't have a way to pay for it.
That's terrible.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, and it's definitely even more affected with mental health, I think, because a lot of people just try to shrug it off because they don't have the money to go see a therapist, or lucky enough to be able to go see a therapist at a local LGBT youth center that we have, and they give free therapy to the LGBT youth in the area, but not everybody has that. A lot of people that need like mental health care that don't have the money do rely on like charities and nonprofits that provide that type of assistance, but not everybody can get that. So it's definitely an issue. And I think that people are starting to realize that the lack of mental health care is definitely an issue in our country.
Yeah, it's a big issue for you guys. I have a friend who lives in America, and the fact that she had to choose between whether she was going to have therapy and medication for her mental illnesses or whether she was going to finish her final year at university, because she couldn't afford to do both. And that was, I don't know why it was such a shock for me to hear, but like that wouldn't happen in the UK because we have the NHS. But the NHS is massively underfunded. So
yes, I know the NHS has its own problems too, because I've heard people over there in the UK. I know that it's definitely a problem over there as well, because I've heard people, and seen people post on Facebook that live over in the UK that they've been put on wait lists or denied treatment because they say there's not enough funding, or there's too many people who need that specific treatment or that specific diagnosis or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of the times, if you're lucky enough to get in and to see someone for what you need to talk about, a lot of the times they're so busy that they'll rush you through as fast as possible, and you don't end up getting the treatment that you need and the care you need because there's just too much pressure on the NHS. But I definitely think that you guys in America need more funding as well towards your mental health stuff, because that's awful that you're kind of left on your own to deal with it by the people who are most in charge of your country.
Yeah, it is really unfortunate. I think it's a lot of countries. I mean, I think it's around the world that there's a lot of issues with mental health specifically, is not getting the funding that it needs and not getting the attention that it needs. But definitely it is an issue. We were lucky enough to have grown up in a pretty middle class family. When we were diagnosed, we were first diagnosed with DID, not really using any diagnostic test or anything. It was just like, I observed these symptoms in you, so I'm diagnosing you with it. And that wasn't good enough for our insurance. So they required us to go to a specialist, a DID specialist, to go do this 6-hour interview called like the SCID-D.
Yeah.
And then they also did the DES, the dissociative experience scale, to get a more official diagnosis, I guess. But yeah, that's another thing about the insurance companies. Depending on the insurance company, because they're so privatized, they can be very picky and choosy about what they want to treat and what they think is enough. If you need to be in a residential treatment facility or in an acute treatment facility, they will make the decision when you've had enough and they're not going to pay for it anymore.
Yeah. It's the same with private treatments over here, so I couldn't get treated for DID on the NHS. I'm lucky as well to be relatively supported, and I know if I hadn't have been, I wouldn't be in therapy now, and I definitely wouldn't have been able to afford the diagnosis, because you said yours was 6 hours, right?
Yeah, it was like 6 hours.
Ours was 4. And I spoke to somebody on Twitter who was from America the other day, and he said that his was 6 hours as well. So I do wonder if that's a discrepancy between UK and US in the amount of time it takes to test, or whether that's an average, or that you two just happen to have the same amount of time, or whether yours is more thorough than ours in the UK. The guy I saw was actually the same person who diagnosed multiplicity in me, and he's got a lot of experience.
Oh yeah, I've heard really good things about him. Yeah, from several people over there.
Yeah, so. He's fantastic. I don't think we would have been able to get a diagnosis without him. So if there were more people like Remy, which is the name of the man from the Pottergate Centre, if anyone in the UK is interested, then it would be so much easier to provide the treatment and be able to access the diagnoses and stuff, which would allow you to get funding from your
Yeah,
Forgotten what it's called again. I'm sorry. I'm so shady.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, if there was more people who actually understood DID and were qualified to give these types of interviews, then more people would have those resources.
Sorry, I'm really sorry.
No, it's fine.
Hiya. Alright, sorry, it's Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Hiya.
No, it's no problem.
I'm so sorry, what's happening?
We're talking about mental health care in the US and the UK.
Oh, you're Labyrinth System, aren't you?
Yes, Scarlet.
Yeah, I know you. Alright, I'm sorry. Right, alright, so what have we got to do?
We were talking, I don't even remember what we were talking about. Now I have like 3 protectors right here, and I don't know why.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But yeah, I don't even remember what we were talking about, honestly.
Hello everybody, this is Chloe. I just wanted to explain what's just happened for those of you who might be a little bit confused, because I can preempt a lot of questions coming on this. So before we started this Skype session, I, Chloe, watched a video about somebody who was basically saying DID was fake and stuff like that, and it really tripped me out a little bit and caused a little bit of drama inside the system. Everyone was a bit uncomfortable, there was a lot going on, hence the reason for this switch, because I was getting dissociated and everything was just getting a bit crazy inside. I was feeling a bit uncomfortable after what I'd watched before going on this Skype call. But what's really important if you're watching this is to watch how Scarlet responded to Kyle stepping forward. One of the first things you might have noticed is that when Kyle steps forward, he still sounds relatively like me. He sounds different. His voice is slower and a little bit lower than mine, but not how you guys are used to hearing Kyle being Kyle. This is because when an alter comes forward, they may not immediately know that they're safe or whether they have to act like the host or what situation they're in. Kyle immediately knows from what he can see on the screen that we're on the Skype call that we all knew was happening today for the collab with the Labyrinth System. So he knows, at least in some aspect, he can say, obviously, that there's been a switch because, of course, Scarlet's going to know that. She's part of a DID system. And as Kyle starts to feel safer, you can hear his voice drop the act of the Chloe voice that everybody's used to putting on when they have to pretend to be the host, and his voice becomes more as you know Kyle's voice to be, which is how his voice naturally goes. So a great way to respond to a switch is exactly how Scarlet did it here. She was patient, she didn't rush anything, she waited until Kyle was ready to talk, she waited until the switch was complete and that the dissociation was limited enough that Kyle could talk. Kyle said, "It's me," and she welcomed him immediately and explained to him what was going on. She said, "We're doing a collab and this is what we're talking about." So she immediately grounded Kyle. He knew he could feel safe. He wasn't being rushed by her, and it was just a very welcoming and nice way to be welcomed into the world from what I heard, because you can see from this that Kyle was embarrassed. When I came back to after this Skype call was over, I was extremely embarrassed and I immediately messaged Scarlet and I felt really bad. I felt like I'd ruined the collab and that everything was terrible, but she was really, really lovely about it, which is fantastic. So points to take away from this: be calm, just take your time when someone's having a switch and help to ground them, help them to know what's going on and that they're safe to be themselves and that there's no danger. So I just wanted to leave this little clip in here because I knew that people were going to be asking questions about it. We weren't expecting this to happen, but this is a great way to respond to a switch. So I haven't edited anything, I've left it as it is in the hope that it might help people who have people with DID in their lives, or if you have DID and you want to, I don't know, just see, I guess. But anyway, back to the collab.
You're right. How long did it take you before you got diagnosed with DID?
Well, I think we were in the mental health system just about 7 years there, because we were diagnosed 15, and we started seeing mental health professionals at like 7 years old. So,
that's well young.
Yeah.
Damn.
Sorry?
That's well young.
Yeah. Our teachers at school were saying like that they thought we had ADHD. So they thought we had ADHD. We didn't have ADHD. We had PTSD symptoms.
And then you went through the system from there.
We just saw one mental health professional after another, put us on different medication, said anxiety, depression, just that kind of thing, bipolar at one point. And then finally, we were hospitalized in an acute treatment facility. And then after we got out of that, we saw a different therapist than the one that we were seeing beforehand. And she's the one after like 4 or 5 sessions who started to suspect that we had DID. And then after like 10 or 11 sessions, I think, brought it up to us, like this, not DID specifically, but like the symptoms and stuff. And then eventually diagnosed us with DID.
All right. That's interesting that you didn't keep the same therapist after you were hospitalized then.
We switched therapists a lot. I think it had to do with our insurance and like the costs and things like that. We switched therapists quite a bit.
Yeah. Was that, so if that was to do with your insurance, like we don't, in the UK, we don't need to have insurance in order to get treatment. I know you guys do because you don't have like the NHS and stuff like that, right? But
yeah.
Surely that must make it really difficult if it's being, set by the people who are basically giving you the money to get the treatment. Then you don't really have control over who you're seeing, I'm guessing?
Basically. And a lot of times you don't have to switch around as much as we did. I just know that we had to switch insurances a couple times. And like,
right.
It was a whole thing. I'm not really sure all the details of it, but yeah, it is unfortunate because there was some really good ones in there, and then there was some not so great ones. Yeah. But the last therapist we saw before the therapist that we're seeing now, he was like the best therapist that we ever had.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, our mom was paying for us to see him because he's actually out of network, which means that like we had to pay for like the full sessions or like the majority of them.
What, like on your own rather than through your?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of mental health care is out of network. Like it's very hard to find a good in-network therapist. So even if you have insurance, a lot of it doesn't really cover the mental health.
That doesn't make any sense then. So basically, that's terrible. So like that's something that should change in order to make it easier for you to get access to the mental health care you need. Because it sounds like it's almost like they're just kind of taking your money but making it more difficult for you to like have to hop around different areas to find the treatment that you need.
Yeah, basically.
Sorry.
That's basically the reality of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's rubbish. Because like in the UK, we definitely, like after hearing you talk about that, we have a lot more freedom in where we want to go. Like, yeah, you can choose to, like, if the NHS isn't working out for you or, they don't have the right treatment options on the NHS, like, you have the choice of going private.
Well, if you have... No, go ahead. What were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, but if you go private, like, that's your choice where you go wherever. Like, you're not being told where you have to go or, like, different amounts of payments. Like, that's all under your control rather than, coming from a company who tells you where you can go and stuff. Like networks.
Well, yeah, if you have good insurance, then you do have a lot more freedom. But good insurance costs a lot more money.
Yeah.
So not everybody can have the good insurance that provides you with the freedom to choose between. Sometimes insurance is covered by like work and things like that, and that'll cover like the family. But a lot of times that insurance doesn't cover a lot. Like my partner, for example, they were covered under because their dad worked for the military, so they were covered under like TRICARE.
Right.
But then once their dad retired, they had like a TRICARE plan, but it'll still have like you have to pay like deductibles, like 30% of how much ever. Like it doesn't cover just having insurance, which is you pay monthly usually. Just having it doesn't guarantee that like everything's paid for. You still have to pay for like half of the things usually, or like a good portion of it.
Wow, That doesn't sound fair. It sounds like literally the more money you earn, the better off you're going to be, no matter like where you are or what your mental capabilities are and mental health.
No,
that's
definitely.
Not right.
That's definitely the reality of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
That's really upsetting, actually. As at least in the UK, like, even though the NHS is, you know, very overwhelmed and underfunded, like, that is an option, at least for, even if it's just like really minor help, you can go to the NHS. Like, I know that, you know, some people, even if it's like a physical injury, like, you can't afford to go and get help in the USA, and that seems like such a backwards thing to me, like, coming from the UK. Like, that just seems like that wouldn't happen here, kind of thing. It's worrying.
And there is an insurance that the government has for low income people.
All right.
But it still does cost money, and I think there's also like Medicare. It can be hard to get as well. Like if you're disabled and you can't work, but you're not on disability, because it's very hard to get disability. It's very hard to get benefits as well. They deny. The majority of the people are denied the first time, and it takes years usually.
Yeah.
So if you're not considered disabled by the government and you're not working, it can be very hard to get that low income insurance as well.
Right. Yeah, we have the same problem with getting on benefits in the UK. Like, for example, we have a friend or like an acquaintance who she's wheelchair bound. Like, she literally can't walk. She's very, very unwell, hospitalised like a lot of the time, and she applied for personal independence payment, so PIP, which like helps you, you know, get money when you can't work, sort of thing, if you're too disabled or too unwell to work. And they rejected her, and they were like, "Oh no, like, you're fine." She couldn't walk, like, she couldn't leave the house, and like they still rejected her. And it was like, it took her like three attempts before they, you know, gave her the money. And like, it's hard.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I think
because
during
this time, it's like, what are disabled people supposed to do? You know, just like, and then they end up on the streets. You know, end up homeless. When somebody applies for disability, the majority of the time it's because they can't work. So they can't work, and they're not getting any money. It's something that's very irritating, and obviously it goes on in both of our countries.
Yeah, I think that it's like a stigma that exists in both our countries as well. Is that the idea of, I don't know if this is the same, but like in our country, there's this big stigma around being on disability, because there's a lot of shows and stuff where it's like, oh, you know, you're on disability, but you can work, you just don't want to, and you're being a lazy and you're a bum and stuff like that. And a lot of people just assume that if you're on disability, then you're sort of just taking it for advantage and you're not trying hard enough and stuff like that, which is obviously really damaging for people who really do need to get on disability and benefits, because it's less likely that it's going to be given out because of that stigma.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's a stigma that's over here as well, and it's I don't think people realize how hard it is to actually get these benefits. Like, I have a very good friend of mine who's tried several times, and they can't work, and they still have not been able to get any kind of support from the government.
Yeah, we're the same. Like, we had a bit of a chance when we were living with our now ex-partner and some other friends, and we had to move back home, and that basically, it was hard enough as it was, and we didn't manage to get on benefits then. But now that we're living back home, it's like there's no chance whatsoever. So it's kind of like they assume that, you know, if you've got somewhere to live right now, then, you know, it's not bad enough. But when you're on the streets, then suddenly it's bad enough. It's like, where are those procedures and those steps to make sure that that doesn't happen? Why have you got to wait until you're at your worst place before you get treatment? And I think that's the same in the mental health system. People are like, okay, well, how many times have you had a suicide attempt? Or, you know, like, how often do you self-harm and stuff like that? There should be things in place before it gets to that point where people can get help.
Exactly, yeah, and I think it's a similar situation with, like, inpatient and you know, acute treatment and residential treatment. It's a similar situation. If somebody, I know a lot of people who have attempted suicide. In fact, we've attempted suicide and been placed into inpatient for a week, just to be stabilized, and then just sent back out. And they put us on different meds. But how can you put us on different meds and only observe us for a week and then know if it's actually going to work? Because it takes a while for meds to actually get in the system. And that's a problem that I see a lot. That they'll go in for like 5 days, a week, 2 weeks at the most. Then they're sent back out with these new meds that haven't even gotten a chance to really get into their system.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate.
Because in some cases, like certain medicines, you can have a really adverse reaction to, but it does take like 2-3 weeks, like you said, for it to like properly go through your system. So I think that's it for this collab. So thank you so much to Scarlet for joining us. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I definitely did. Thank you for having me.
Don't forget to go check out the Labyrinth System because they do some really good stuff. They're really underappreciated on their channel, so they definitely deserve some more subscribers. So if you like this, please don't forget to go check them out. Check out the rest of our stuff as well. Chloe works really hard on all the little playlists we've got. And I guess we'll see you all in the next video, guys. Bye.
Bye.